Hey everybody, it's Preacher. We're going to do the healer comparison for Legion today. What I'm going to say is we're going to get straight into the list, as I know that's what most of you care about. However, at the very end of the video, there's an extra discussion with me about some of the things we picked up while making this one. All right, so let's go. So before we get into this, for many of you who've been trying out the pre-patch, you understand that Legion works very differently with your healer, and you might be struggling to see that reflected in the current testing you're doing. Bear in mind that Mythic dungeons and their difficulty scaling is a big part of Legion content, which is why a lot of healers, pretty much every single one of them, has a decent DPS component. Some have better than others, but you are going to be mixing in your DPS and your healing. Now that's a good thing, because if people don't need healing, making the decision on when to switch to DPS and switch back is obviously a good play, and also it just keeps you interested, instead of being that guy who like presses Riptide or whatever, or presses fucking Rejuve and just goes AFK and watches Netflix all the time. You should be more interested in your character, although I can understand some people don't particularly like that. Usually in these comparisons, we split the categories into three: the terrible specs, the very, very good specs, but not spectacular, and then the spectacular specs. I will say there are no terrible healing specs. Whichever one you think looks coolest or you think plays the best, you'll be fine with. You'll be absolutely fine with. There are no terrible healing specs. It took a ludicrous amount of testing to arrive at that conclusion. And honestly, there was no spec that I was thinking, you know what, I just don't want to play this anymore. There was a couple where I was leaning towards the board side, and they'll be at the latter end of the list. But terrible? No, not in the least. Not in no way, no way. Okay then, so let's get into our list then. At the bottom, but still fantastic, is the Holy Priest. The only reason I had to put it sort of at the bottom is that it was the first one, like I said a moment ago, where I was like, okay, I'm ready to move on from this. Why? It's the iconic balls to the wall basic healer. It's just the bleh of health that outputs from it. It doesn't have much else going on from that. It just has very, very basic spells. That's it. So I got kind of tired of it after a little bit. So it's got basic miracles, the holy word serenity, which is like a big bleh, you know, instant cast single heal, the big bleh AoE heal that goes along with it. They reset, you press them, and other than that, you've got single target heals and hots and stuff. I did like the more focus on Prayer of Mending. I did like that. I like that it leaves renews on the targets with pretty good frequency. Although I will point out the RNG bonuses, which are prevalent across all the healers, make so little sense to me, because healers just don't work that way. They don't adapt in that way. It's not like a DPSer who can wait for that perfect moment when their character aligns in order to make decisions. Healers respond and predict what's going on into the fight regardless, and having all these bonuses like extra heals and sometimes things do double, it seems really rubbish. Big T is a big factor in that way. You know, Big T will come out and aid you in combat. I don't always want Big T to do that, and he actually procs pretty irregularly, so I don't really enjoy that idea. But Big T is still cool, to say the least. The DPS style is, again, a little bit lackluster compared to others. Holy Fire, Holy Word Chastise, Smite Spam isn't the most interesting in the world, has no synergy going on with it. Would like something else thrown in there just to give it a little bit more spice. I would say, though, that I used to call priests the kings of having the toolkit, a toolkit that is often lost in raids. They no longer are. There are other healers now who have better toolkits for sure. But I did find a lot of fun in dropping feathers for people, finding where I can position myself for perfect leaps, seeing what's going to happen in the fight and doing that. But other than that, the raw healing style is what the Holy Priest is known for, and it still does that. And I think it will always do that. Similar to an arms warrior will always carry a big two-handed weapon, the Holy Priest will just be a raw HPS big fat heal outputter, and that's its job. Next on the list then, in order, was the Resto Druid. Kind of difficult to place the next three, honestly. They were all very, very close. The Resto Druid, for me, is something that hasn't really changed a lot over the last few years, but hasn't had to. I think people want change for the sake of change, and Blizzard rightfully says, you know what, we're pretty close to where we expect this spec to be in terms of gameplay, and we're going to kind of keep it around there. So there's, in terms of actual raw output gameplay from anybody who's played this before, it doesn't change that much from something you've probably known since, can we go back as far as TBC? Maybe a stretch. Yeah, about that far ago, they decided what the Resto Druid was all about, and have kind of stuck with it with some derivative changes in between there, but for the most part, it's pretty much the same. You're still going to be wild growthing and doing all that kind of stuff. I really like the DPS choices, though. Feral is particularly fun if you can get into melee, as balance is okay with a few simplistic balance spells thrown in, and deciding when you could pop into DPS and when you could pop out is easier on a Resto Druid, which I thought was quite nice, because you can throw out a lot of hots, you can hot up the tank, switch over into Moonkin or into a cat, do some decent deeps, then pop back out, drop down an efflorescence and do all those kind of things, rescue it with a wild growth. All these kind of things are very cool. They have some nice bonuses where you can buff up your wild growth. Obviously, you're going to be doing the same kind of things that you've been doing all the way through Warlords of Draenor, which is it 6 people? Are they going to get the benefit of my wild growth? All those kind of choices are unchanged. The use of the Garnier artifact ability, which increases the frequency of the hots, works well when you've got plenty of hots, and your talent system is still tremendous. Absolutely tremendous. I found fun in all the different talents, deciding which was best. Am I going to be tank healing here? Am I going to be doing AoE healing in between? Now, these are all things that have existed for the Resto Druid for a very long time, and therefore, for anybody looking for something a little bit different, you're not going to find it here. You're not going to find it here. If you've played a Resto Druid before, you're going to pick this thing up instantaneously and be like, okay, I get exactly what's going on here, which is probably what you found on the current pre-patch. Next up then, got a little bit more difficult again. Some of these are actually borderline into the exceptional. But next up was the Holy Paladin, which might surprise a lot of you, as I historically hate the Holy Paladin as being basically a light well, is what I compared it to so many times in Warlords of Draenor, as just being this like stodge of flesh that stands in your raid just churning out these heals with little to no thought. Actually, one of the specs, one of the Paladin specs that lost Holy Power that I think did the absolute best out of it, unlike the Prot Paladin. It absolutely benefits from the no Holy Power thing. The Holy Power management was kind of forcing you to keep pressing spells even if you didn't really want to. It had that whole Holy Radiance thing going on. The biggest improvement for me was twofold. One, the use of the two-handed mace. Love it. Absolutely love it. It's so cool because all the healers have to do DPS now. Is getting in there with the big 2H really fits the Paladin theme so well. I really like that they went with the two-hander. I think some people initially were like, oh, where's my one-hander and shield? That's what a Holy Paladin uses. Like, no, trust me. Once you get your big fucking mace and you get in there as a healer and start smacking things in the face, it's such a nice combination that isn't seen anywhere else in the game. There is no other spec that is doing this and mixing in that two-handed gameplay. Even though it's only Crusader Strike and Consecrate and Judgment and stuff, it's still cool as fuck to look at. Because even though we're not Ret, the animations that they gave the Paladin with the two-hander are so fucking cool. Really like it. On top of that, they managed to make Beacon of Faith not seem like the only fucking choice in the universe. Hey! I've been playing around a lot with Beacon of the Lightbringer, honestly, which is all to do with your positioning. This adds so much more weight to the thought instead of being this sludge. A sludge of flesh, like I said, that stands in the middle of the raid. Now you're actually considering your position. You gain benefits from being closer to people. You can pick what your auras are. Are you going to reduce damage? Are you going to help with healing? Are you going to do all these kind of things? Very fucking cool. So now I was considering, I need to make sure I'm here. You know, if my party wanders off, where are my party grouping up? Where's my best place to stand? Where have I got my beacon? Usually on the tank, obviously. And then considering, do I want to be in melee so I can do some damage? Where does that leave the range? Maybe I can switch my beacon around here and do things like that, particularly in like the normals and mythics and stuff like that. Lots of different choice here from what I played in the past with the Holy Paladin, which has just been like, oh, every single choice here is super obvious, and therefore that's what I'm going to play. Now it's a case of, do I want this? Do I want that? What am I going to be doing? The talents make way more sense than they do with something like the Holy Priest, and it's just a really lovely change. Really lovely change. Enjoyed the Holy Paladin far more than I thought I would. The next three that we're going to talk about then. I've left one out of the exceptional, but I'm almost in the mind that I should have put it in there. Because it is fucking really cool. And it's mainly down to its toolkit. So I'm just going to say this is on the borderline of being very, very cool and almost exceptional, is the Resto Shaman. The Resto Shaman is now the toolkit master. The toolkit master. And this is going to serve you so fucking well in Legion. It is ridiculous. And that's something I could truly adore. The changes from moving away from Earthshield and all that at first were a bit like, this feels like you just dumbed down the spec. And then I played it for a lot of hours in a lot of different content. I was like, this spec is so fucking cool now. For a healer, I mean, it almost doesn't even... it feels like a hybrid more than anything than just a healer. I feel like I'm a genuine hybrid. And I don't mean that as in like healing and DPS. I'm talking about utility as well in what I'm bringing to the game. The talent system isn't exciting. It's not an exciting talent system, but mechanically it makes so much sense. And that's good thing for healers. As I said, healers look for something different in what they want out of things. They don't like RNG, they don't like random stuff. What they like is good predictability and choices that make sense for the encounters that they're fighting. And the Resto Shaman talent system might look bland, and it does honestly look bland, but it just makes so much mechanical sense when you're looking at it from what content am I going to be doing? I mean, Wellspring feels crazy good right now. Like, they changed High Tide, so you might have seen previously, probably in the alpha video I did on Resto, where we could do ridiculous chain heals that went all around the place. They've nerfed a lot of that stuff down. And Ascendance is a talent which crushes a lot of shamans. I understand that. I get that. Ascendance looks cool, but I think with the other choices it makes a lot of sense. What is super cool in here is things like Windrush Totem, so Stampeding Roar essentially has been added. This is another toolkit that's been added to the Resto Shaman. So fucking good. Was using this on cooldown, and when I went to my Resto Druid, Jesus fuck did I miss it. Holy shit. Oh, God, it's so fucking good. It was speeding through dungeons. You can already imagine how that's going to play out if you're against the timer and you're a class that's a healer that's bringing speed boosts. Oh, so good. Lightning Surge Totem, so I'm CCing all the mobs. Am I Earth Grabbing? Am I Voodoo Toteming them? Do I want more Riptides? Do I want more Tidal Wave procs? All these things are so cool with a decent DPS rotation put on fucking top. It's basic. Super basic. Flame Shock, Lava Burst, Lightning Bolt, and of course, Chain Lightning thrown in there as well. Fucking cool. Had a ton of fun with that. And along with that, we also still maintain interrupts and purges, all the stuff that makes you tremendous. A CC in the form of Hex, Spirit Walkers, Grace, fucking the list goes on and on of the different options and choices you have. And you should be playing a Resto Shaman to its fucking max. You really should be playing a Resto Shaman to its fucking max. And if you are not, you are missing out on something very cool. I was also super happy that they changed that shitty artifact spell that, like, exploded your healing rain into healing to just, like, heals people as an AoE. It's more boring now, but the gameplay of the old one, which was healing rains down and then you kind of detonate it just as it's about to expire to get some extra healing out, just wasn't fun. It was not fun. It was very obtuse and in your face. And the new one is less creative for sure. It just heals people, but it's certainly more gameplay wise. It fits in so much better than the old one. So again, they got big fucking props from me for that one. So we've got two left, and now we're in the exceptional for definite category. And this one will be, no doubt, contentious. In fact, both of them will probably be contentious, because you either like it or you don't like it, but I've even made an individual video on it recently. Is the Disc Priest. Fucking love this thing, no matter how much I've played it. And I was really happy to have to put in, it was like, oh no, I've got to put in, like, so much testing on the Disc Priest in all different kinds of content. What a pisser. Nope. Nope. Managing it, predicting, just the whole gameplay with the Disc Priest. And again, I've just done a video on it like last week, so you can check more detailed comments there. Of the style of play into the predictability and creating these tiny windows where you can just do enormous amounts of healing. And if you get it perfectly right, oh, it's so satisfying. It's so satisfying to see. And just the little things that you don't think will be important, like contrition is like more atonement by just 2 seconds. That sounds really shitty, and then you figure it out. It's like, wow, that makes such a fucking difference. As does Power Infusion. I get this extra little powered radiance out, and it makes such a fucking difference. Adore it. Adore it. My only criticism is I want a really good AoE spell. That's all I want, is a really good AoE spell. That would make it that little bit more fun. But the mobility, the management, the way they've introduced it in such a nice way as to be able to be hopefully picked up by the masses and understand what's going on with it. They've done such a good job with it. And then there are those people who fucking can't stand it, and I get it. I truly get it. I totally get it. This is not what you signed up for when you played a Disc Priest. And if you feel some sort of connection to it, you liked the old style of play, I totally understand why you dislike this one. But from someone who was not like committed that Disc must be a certain way and looking for something a little bit different when I play my healers, fuck yeah, man, bring it on. And that means that my #1 spot, as it has done since the alpha, you might remember the initial Mistweaver videos, we were playing a fully artifact-loaded 110 in every single dungeon I could get my face into is the Mistweaver Monk. I just can't get bored of this thing. I can't get bored of this thing. Not only is the talent system super interesting, super interesting in different styles of play, whether you're going to be melee focused, which I have a leaning towards rather than range, so this kind of tipped it ahead of like the Resto Shaman for me in terms of the DPS style. I much prefer melee. Tracking resets and procs on there, it's so fucking cool. Figuring out how do I want to work my Thunder Focus Tea. And Thunder Focus Tea, as usual, gives you all these different options about what you want to do with it and how you're going to manipulate it into doing different things. All these things are constantly changing and constantly in flux. And that's so fucking rewarding. Especially as you can mix this in. It has solid AoE. You've got Spinning Cray Kick. You can get into your Rushing Jade Wind. You can have Chi Ji charging around, which is so cool. The only negative I ever found with the Mistweaver Monk was the ridiculous channeled Soothing Mist that I truly wish would just fuck off and die in a fire. Because any talent that encourages you to not press things is ridiculous. Any talent that actually says, you know what might be a good idea here is if you just stop playing the game and just let it do its thing. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. But everything else here, I fucking love it. Everything has its own little interactions that make so much sense. It has interesting spells. So we look at something like the Holy Priest or the Resto Druid, which kind of has similar spells of varying power, or very, very similar spells, single target AoE. And then you look at things like Vivify. Heals one person and then two other people. And then you look at Enveloping Mist, which has that wild growth healing mechanic to it. But then you look over at Effuse, nice straight up heal. Then you look at Renewing Mist, which has its own mechanics tied to it. You then look to Essence Font, which has its own mechanics tied to it. Can be used on the move sometimes. Can have all these mobility added to it if you want to. You can move in speed with Tiger's Lust. You can then modify all of these spells again on top of all the interesting mechanics that each of them has. I mean, the Mistweaver tooltips are fucking huge. For nearly every single spell is like 4 or 5 lines, and then you, or if not more, and then you move into Thunder Focus Tea, and it all changes again. It all switches up exactly how you use these things, which means you have just this wonderful variety of choice, and the DPS style and all that is just the best for me, the best. But I have to say, as I close out here, is Resto Shaman, Disc Priest, and Mistweaver were all super close to being my favorite. Super, super close. I'm talking like within a does it fucking matter kind of perspective, right? Does it matter what I do? And ultimately, I landed on the Mistweaver as being something that I just can't stop jumping onto when I want to heal something. I'm like, cool, I'll log my Mistweaver. And that's ultimately how I ended up making my decision. I sat here and I pondered it and I was writing everything out. And I just thought to myself, when I'm asked to heal something for somebody, if someone's like, Preacher, can you come and do some healing in this mythic or whatever, what's the character I want to log? And most of the time, it was, sure, I'll log my monk. And that's what I wanted to be on. Ladies and gentlemen, there's your healer comparison. I hope that opens your eyes and hopefully lets you know that they're all pretty fucking good. All right, guys, I'll see you again. Bye-bye. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed the list. I hope that maybe opened your eyes to some specs that maybe you hadn't considered, or maybe you'll give a try, or something if you've never healed. Maybe that looks like fun to you. I wanted to put this addendum on the back end here because making this video was the hardest one we had to do out of the range, the melee, and the tanks. It was so fucking difficult, mainly because of the reliance on other people. Not only the people we were running in dungeons with, but we had to use a huge amount of other people's characters to get 110s with decent artifact skills and stuff so we could do proper testing. And then what content do we test on mainly? Where do we focus our attention? The big problem we had is obviously I like to film on my own characters so people on the internet don't start being dicks, which surprisingly they can do. But also doing stuff with randoms. I like to do stuff with pugs when I'm filming stuff because one, random entertaining things can happen, and on top of that, that's more realistic for a lot of people. But I've got to say this to the healers. I don't know how you guys, after playing as much healing as I've done over the last few days, I don't know how you guys live in that pug world, because it's terrible. You're missing out on so much. I had boss fights that ordinarily should take about a minute, minute and a half to kill. Sometimes they were taking like 6+ minutes playing in the pug world to down these bosses and coping with, especially guys, fucking Jesus, the demon hunters are coming. Look at the DPS demon hunter. Look who that is targeting of these, these over-the-top great animations and all that kind of stuff. Technical prowess, yes, that does exist, but most people are going because of kick-ass eye-beams. That means you're going to attract a lot of people playing demon hunters who should not be fucking tanking. And I had so many times where I had to tell people, it's like, I can see you're at 100 pain, which is their resource, all the time. You are doing literally nothing to prevent damage, and I'm spam healing you and spam healing you, and it's not fun. You're ruining my experience, and they're everywhere, so be aware of that. If you are in the pug world, find a guild, guys. you don't know what you're missing. You really don't. It's an awful experience in there. It's truly terrible. And if you're walking away feeling stressed out, angry, I had to put up with X, Y, and Z, perhaps even going to the WoW forums and saying things like, you know, worst things that happen to healers in a group. If you're dealing with that world, there's a totally different world out there. It exists. Guilds don't work that way. Okay? Play with your friends. Make some new friends. Just join a guild. Give it a try. Even if it's only raiding once a week or doing some PvP once a week. Don't live in that LFG world. It's fucking terrible. It's so, so bad. I've put in so many hours recently, and every single experience pretty much was either okay, in which case things got done, or it was awful. There was no really great experiences to be had while healing, because if you do well, it's a thankless job. No one gives a shit. If your dispels are super crispy to the point where you, like Eye of Ashara is a great example, especially when you're on Mythic, is you'll get a notification of things about to happen to the person. You actually get the on-screen notification a few seconds before you have to dispel, which means you know the guy and you can target the guy, and the second the buff appears, it disappears, right? Even when you're doing that, nobody notices. No one gives a shit. I mean, the odd player might notice, but they're probably not going to say, great dispelling, bro, right? That's not going to happen. And then they just disappear and fuck off at the end, or you have to res people and they don't say thank you or whatever. And I'm not saying that manners is necessary, but that world is a far cry from what exists when you're healing your buddies and getting to know new friends and stuff. So I just wanted to put that out there. But I hope you enjoyed the list anyway. I hope you got what you wanted from it. All right. So please consider doing something better, because healing can be a lot of fun. I know it can. But not in that world. Not in that world. All right, I'll see you again. Bye-bye.